All right, welcome back to the Wide Right Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic. It is Monday, August 29th, right around 10 a.m. Joined once again by Andrew Ferrelli of the South Florida Express. Andrew was a busy guy this week, driving all over the state to watch the start of the high school football season, and he got to watch four of the best games probably in the country, involving four of our South Florida teams. And Andrew, what was it like, man? Tell us where you went and then how wacky the weekend was.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy weekend. Started on Friday, went up to Bradenton for the IMG Miami Central game. Um, Seeing Miami Central go up there and pull out the win there was pretty exciting. I was pulling for the hometown team there, even though IMG's got a lot of Miami commits on there. But it's always fun to see those South Florida teams go beat national powerhouses like that. So that was the first game I saw. And then I know we'll get into some of the prospects and stuff in that game later. They all played pretty well. Got back from that game probably 2, 3 a.m. and then was back at St. Thomas at 11 a.m. for the triple header out there on the turf in the heat all day, watching the St. Thomas St. Joe's game, then watching Heritage play Los Alamitos, and then Chaminade play St. John's. Didn't end up leaving there till close to like 10:30 p.m. So it was a long 2 days for sure.
So you spent all day yesterday, I'm sure, recovering and tending to your sunburn wounds there because you look like you got some sun, brother.
Definitely, yeah. Put on sunscreen a few times, but there's only so much you could do being out there that long.
Yeah. Well, listen, I didn't end up going to any games this week. I had gone the previous week to Cardinal Gibbons to watch that jamboree. I decided it's the final weekend off before the regular season starts for college football. Obviously, Miami Bethune-Cookman kick off this Saturday at 3:30 at Hard Rock Stadium. I'll be there for that. And I'll probably be out at a few high school games, but I promised the wife I would do some things with her over the weekend, final weekend before the season starts. So I didn't go watch any of the games, but I did watch a lot of the highlights. And I wrote about Reuben Bain, who actually had 3 sacks. He's one of the top Miami targets in this cycle that still remains uncommitted. And, I watched the film, had a rough day against Francis Mauigoa from what I saw when he was lined up on the edge on that side. Mauigoa, the Miami commitment, number one offensive tackle in the country, definitely stuffed him. It seemed probably most of the game. I know Antonio Tripp, another Miami commitment, who plays center. I don't think he played in that game. I didn't see him in any of the highlights. I didn't see any cut ups for him at all. But what was your takeaway from that game from a recruiting perspective? And then we can just talk about all the guys that were there.
Yeah, Tripp didn't play much. I don't think he played at all. I don't know if it was injury related, if they just held him out. He only got to IMG a couple weeks ago, so there's still some stuff going on there. But as for the guys that played, I mean, Francis Mauigoa was Francis Mauigoa. He's one of the best, most complete offensive tackle prospects I've watched in a long time. And yeah, when Bain was matched up against him for the first quarter and a half, he had a rough go. Francis was shutting him down pretty easily. There was a couple of times where Bain would try to get outside around him, and Francis would just kind of push him down and get and land on top of him. Um, so I mean, but going against Francis is a task for anyone. He shut down Damon Wilson, who's another five-star defensive end the week before. He's Francis is gonna shut down anyone. But yeah, as soon as they moved Bain inside and then started moving him around to get him away from Francis, he dominated. He lived in the backfield, had 3 sacks in like the last 2.5 quarters of that game, and really changed everything for the way IMG's offense was running. They didn't have time to drop back and spread the ball to their receivers. They started trying to run the ball away from him, and it really impacted the game a lot. As soon as they got him away from Francis, he was probably the best player out there on the field.
Yeah, I think IMG has four offensive linemen that are committed to Power Five schools, if I'm not mistaken. We mentioned Tripp not playing in that game. I know Harris, Najee Harris, I guess is going to Florida. Played the left guard spot right next to Mauigoa, and so that was obviously a tough area to kind of get through with those two guys there. But Jordan Church did play. He's a kid who's committed to Louisville, an offensive tackle, 6'4", 325. I think he's a 3-star. And Bain did split him and the right guard that he was going up against. His name's Xavier Lozowicki. He's an uncommitted and unranked 6'6", 300-pound senior from Pennsylvania. I did all my homework, Andrew, so I could write about Reuben Bain. And I watched the film closely, and basically, he beat an unranked guy. And I don't want that. I mean, you shouldn't sit here and say like, oh, well, that's nothing, because if you're at IMG Academy and you're starting or you're playing a whole lot, obviously the coaching staff thinks a lot of you. So, like you said, Bain sort of took over, and the defense for Central took over in that game. I wanted to ask you about Riley Williams, who's another Miami commit, obviously at IMG. Don't know how much he did in that game. I think I saw a clip of him making a catch. And then obviously Wayne, the 5-star or
Mhm.
4-star defensive edge rusher. I saw him make a couple plays in the backfield. Just your thoughts on those two guys.
Yeah, Riley Williams played pretty well. They were getting him the ball early. He had a one nice catch and run where they kind of got him the ball short. He turned the corner, made broke some tackles for a big gain. IMG's quarterback did get injured on the first play.
Yeah.
So coupled with between that and then just the issues blocking Reuben Bain and stuff like that, they didn't really throw the ball a whole lot. They didn't have much success throwing the ball. They just didn't have time to do so. So Riley Williams didn't have the biggest game, but the couple of times that they did get him involved and got the ball in his hands, he looked good with it. Jaden Wayne played really well. He got in the backfield a couple of times for some tackles for loss. Central did a really good job getting the ball out quick. I think they knew that they weren't going to be able to block IMG's defensive line very long. So it's a lot of just quick passes, rolling the quarterback out, things like that. They didn't have many sacks at all, but he was in the backfield a lot, getting some tackles for loss, pressuring the quarterback constantly, and looked really good in run support as well.
Yeah, one thing I will say about Bain, and I asked Charles Fishman of Elite Scouting Services about him, and I asked him for a comparison. He said Dallas Turner, that he kind of thinks that it's similar in that regard, in the sense that just the disruptive force that he is, whether it's inside or outside. I guess from getting a chance to see him go up against an elite offensive line, what ultimately do you think is his ceiling? Miami fans are obviously interested, and it's either probably going to be Miami, Alabama, or potentially Oklahoma as his three destinations.
Yeah, I mean, the production speaks for itself. I mean, he had 3 sacks this game. Last year, he had basically averaged over 3 sacks a game, and playing in one of the biggest divisions in South Florida. So the production's there. As for how he projects at the next level, I'm not sure. I think he's going to be good. Like I said, his production's undeniable. But is he long enough to be, that edge rusher? Does he have the frame to maybe add some more weight and move inside? There's a lot of things you could do with him to kind of see where he fits on your defense, depending upon what scheme he goes into next year. Um, so I think Dallas Turner is a little bit faster, maybe a little bit longer than him. But it'll be interesting to see how he develops. He's got an incredible motor. He's got great pass rushing moves, swim moves, spin moves. He's got great technique. He just finds ways to get in the backfield and be disruptive, regardless of where they line him up.
Samuel Mpemba is obviously another guy that Miami's on. They're obviously on a few different edge rushers trying to get him into this class. Just elite
Mhm.
guys. Damon Wilson from Venice. You mentioned how he got shut down by Mauagoa the week prior when IMG beat Venice. But how did Samuel Mpemba look in that game?
Pemba looked pretty good. He did have a UF backpack on, so I wasn't a fan of that. But after the game when he was walking around, but yeah, he looked pretty good in the game. He's very quick off the edge, and just physically, he looks the most college ready right now. He's just got an insane build.
Okay. Let's move on to Saturday and the long day that you had there with in that hot sun. St. Thomas Aquinas beat St. Joseph's out of Pennsylvania 48-37. Connor Hussey is committed to Penn State, 4-star safety, but he's certainly a guy I think that's on Miami's radar, especially since they kind of need a safety in this class. Curious what you thought of his play. What did he do in that game? Because I didn't get to watch film of him in particular in that game.
Conrad Hussey looked good. He made a lot of plays back there. St. Joe's is definitely a run first team. Their quarterback was a built kid, definitely a run first quarterback. But anytime that they did, try to throw the ball deep or make any plays downfield, Conrad Hussey was all over the field back there. They use him and King Mac a lot, just kind of moving them around in the defensive backfield, and they both make a lot of plays. So Conrad Hussey played well. He came up, made a couple big hits too, up in the box. So he looked good, and I know Miami's definitely been talking to him a lot, trying to flip him from Penn State. So we'll see where that ends up.
What's your read on that situation? Because obviously, South Florida kid, a guy who, I would guess if Miami has a good season, They could potentially flip, but Penn State does have Manny Diaz as defensive coordinator. I don't know what that relationship with Hussey and Diaz is like. And Penn State's sort of an interesting situation for them this year in the Big Ten. Um, I don't want to say a make or break year, but they struggled last year, right? I mean, this is kind of
Mhm.
an important year to show some sort of a turnaround. What's your read on that situation with Hussey? Do you think that Miami could flip him?
I think there's definitely a shot there. I think a lot of it just comes down to how they play on the field. I mean, I think it was Jeremiah Smith from the five-star 2024 receiver had the quote last week that pretty much reigns true for all of the South Florida recruits. He basically said just win. That's all he wants to see is Miami to win. And I think if they do that, then they put themselves in good positions. And I think Conrad Hussey is definitely one of the kids that they'd be able to flip from Penn State if that were to happen. If they have 9-10 win season.
All right, be an interesting situation to watch. Any other young guys on Aquinas that might pop on Miami's radar here? Because I think that's it basically for 23. Is there any 24, 25 guys that you think Miami should be after?
Chance Robinson, he's a four-star top 100 receiver for 2024. He played really well. I know Miami likes him in that 24 class as well. Him and his dad are big UM fans. So I think they've got a good shot there. So I think that's one big target to watch for 2024 on that St. Thomas team.
All right, let's move on to American Heritage and Los Alamitos. American Heritage beats them 56 to 27. Before we get to Brandon and Mark and all the guys on the South Florida Express and how they looked great, I saw Roger Bell's kid, former NBA player, of course, from FIU and spent many years in the NBA. He looked good at the end of that game. Big, strong kid. He's only a 2026. I mean, he's I guess a true freshman, right? I mean,
Yep.
how did he stand out like a sore thumb when you saw him? I'm guessing he did.
Yeah, it was surprising to see how he performed in that game. I mean, he's only 13, 14 years old, a freshman. Going in there, he's a tall kid. He obviously needs to add some weight, but he's only, 14. That's going to happen naturally. Um, but yeah, his arm strength surprised me. He was in there slinging the ball around that fourth quarter. He looked really good, especially for a kid that's only a freshman. He's wouldn't be surprised to see him as a highly rated quarterback in the next 3 years or so.
Well, and I'm going to say he looked pretty tall to me. How tall is he?
He's probably around 6'3", 6'4",
Wow. And he's
as a freshman. So
and
it's
what
it's
what what's he going to look like as a senior? He's going to be like a 6'8" quarterback, or what's the deal here?
I don't know. I mean, he's definitely got some height to him. It'll be interesting to see how he develops over the next couple of years. But based on what I saw from him already, wouldn't be surprised to see him as one of the top quarterback recruits come I guess 2025, 2026.
Mm-hmm. Oh, be interesting to watch. All right, so you guys obviously South Florida Express had a ton of kids in this game. Makai Lemon, Malachi Nelson, both USC commitments on the California team. I think Malachi threw 4 touchdowns in the game, and I think Makai basically had all the catches, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
Mackay. So they Saint or Heritage did a good job shutting down pretty much everyone but Mackay. Mackay was dominant. He had a long kick return. He had a couple long receptions. I think 3 or 4 touchdowns in the game. He was incredible. USC definitely got them a good one with him.
yeah, and who was covering him for most of the game? Was it Damari? Who drew the assignment? That's not one that I'm envious of.
So it got moved around. Damari actually played really, really well on him. He had a couple pass breakups against him. He had an interception against him. And then one of Makai's touchdowns was against him, but it was just, I mean, Damari was in perfect position. It was just absolutely an incredible catch. He kind of reached around him to grab the ball as he fell into the end zone. Um, Other than that, they did a really good job moving him around. A lot of it was like misdirection, tunnel screen, stuff like that, just to get him the ball short and let him, just work and rack up the yards after catch.
Heritage has been on the road twice now. I guess Georgia and technically at St. Thomas, right, to win this game, and they've beaten out of state teams pretty handily. Now, how impressive is this Heritage team? And everybody talks about Chaminade and Central, right, being the nationally ranked teams, but does Heritage deserve a little consideration?
I think you could definitely put Heritage in that conversation with them. I think people, they had a not the best year last year. I think they went 5-7 or 5-6, something like that. But people forget that their quarterback Blake Murphy, who was, very very good, was a all over Sports Center and stuff for some incredible runs. He broke his leg or broke his ankle in like the second game last year. And you ended up having to move Brandon Ennis to quarterback. So obviously you don't have him at receiver at that point. And that kind of just threw off their whole season there. Really derailed their offense. But having Blake back at quarterback, you can put Brandon at receiver. And then just having Mark Fletcher in the backfield, surrounded by all the athletes that they have on both sides of the ball. They're definitely one of the top teams in South Florida. I think they'll work themselves into that national conversation.
Well, let me ask you about Mark and Brandon in particular, the two Ohio State commitments. I know Adam Lichtenstein of the Sun Sentinel wrote an article saying, can Miami flip these guys and basically, talk to both of them to see where Miami sort of ranks for them in this picture. Any insight you can share on that? Do the Hurricanes have any hope?
I think so. Definitely more so with Mark than Brandon, but I think they're working hard with both of them. A lot of the Heritage guys came back for the Chaminade game later, so I was talking to them on the sidelines. And I think they'll get Damari Brown is committing, I think late September, right after his Miami official visit. Obviously, that bodes well for them.
Right.
So I think if you get him on board, and I think the next most likely would be Mark Fletcher. I know they talk to him every single day now for the last couple of weeks. They've definitely put in some work there. I think they're hopeful that they can flip him. And then with Brandon, they just keep chipping away. Brandon told me that he talks to Mario texts him more than any coach in the country. Um, Definitely seemed receptive to it. Made it sound like he, might try to get down there at some point this year, this season for either a game or just to go visit down there. So we'll see. They're definitely staying on top of them, chipping away. I think they land Damari. I think they've started talking to Damon Fagan as well. If they look his way at safety, I think they could flip him from NC State. Um, and then I think Fletcher would be the next most likely. But they're definitely doing their work, staying on top of them. And like I said, Brandon said he talks to Cristobal just as much, if not more, than any coach in the country. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not exactly getting my hopes up. I wouldn't say I feel confident by any means. But it's definitely the most positive I've heard him speak regarding Miami.
Of course, the Hurricanes have to go play a season now, so that'll tell people a lot as well. Depending on how their season goes. Let me ask you, Mark, as far as the backfield, I mean, he ran for over 200 yards in this game. I think it was the second game in a row he's put up over 200 yards.
Yeah, I believe he had 19 carries for like 220 and two touchdowns. He was dominant in this game.
Yeah, I'm curious when he looks at the Miami backfield, sees the injuries that they've had. I mean, but they still have technically five underclassmen. Is it too deep of a backfield at Miami? Is he hoping some guys leave if he's going to consider them, or what's kind of from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely something he's considering. Obviously, Miami is a deep backfield, but any of the schools he's looking at are some of the top schools in the country. They have depth at the running back position. It's going to be a competition anywhere he goes. Um, and he's also different than a lot of the guys that Miami has or that any school has. I mean, there's not too many teams that have a guy that's 6'2", 225 that can move like he can. So I think regardless of what backfield he walks into, he definitely brings a different dynamic. So I don't think he's running from competition regardless of where he ends up going.
All right. Looks like UM added a transfer running back this morning in Lucius Stanley from UAB, 6 foot, 215 pounder. So that was good for them to pick up somebody who can at least perform. He's going to come on as a walk on. Had 38 carries, 213 yards, and a touchdowns last year. So now they've got four. I guess you could say scholarship caliber, healthy running backs. We'll see if Don Chaney makes it back at some point this year, but um, it'll be interesting. Let's wrap it up with Hollywood Chaminade and St. John's DC. Chaminade beats St. John's 35-28. You mentioned they were up 35-7 at one point in that game before St. John started to come back. Obviously, the two guys there, the 24 recruits, Jeremiah Smith and Jojo Trader, the two elite receivers, two of your two leaders for this coming season for South Florida Express. How did they
Yeah.
do?
I mean Jeremiah and Jojo were Jeremiah and Jojo. They looked dominant early on. Chaminade may have been the most impressive of the three teams. The St. John's team that they played is highly ranked. They looked the part coming in. They had some massive kids. They had a defensive end that's committed to Clemson, just tons of Power Five kids on their team as well. And they just couldn't keep up with the speed of Chaminade. Chaminade's offensive line did a good job, holding them off so that Cedric Bailey could spread the ball around. And Jeremiah Smith, he got he got open for a touchdown early on, and then they had a trick play where they actually threw it over to Jojo Trader, who then threw it deep to Jeremiah Smith, who was wide open for a long touchdown again. And
Having
then
fun, basically.
exactly, yeah. And then I think to go up 28-7 in the second quarter, Cedric Bailey hit Jojo Trader across the middle for like a 30-yard touchdown. So the two of them dominated a receiver. Cedric Bailey looked really good as well at quarterback. It got to 35-7, and Chaminade kind of called off the Dogs maybe a little earlier than they should have. Got back to 35-28 late in the game, but they held on. Um, but Jeremiah and Jojo were, incredible. They looked like the number one receiver and number one athlete in the country for that 2024 class. And I think Miami's got a good shot at both of them. I definitely say they're in the lead for JoJo. I know he's mentioned lately that Miami seems to be at the top of his list. And then for Jeremiah Smith, they're up there. It's probably them, Ohio State, and Alabama. And I think if you get JoJo on board, that'll play a big part in keeping him home because the two of them are very close. They've played together since Little League.
I would say that of all the recruits, at least locally here, they're the two most important for Mario Cristobal in the next cycle. Because first of all, they're 5-star guys, and whenever you have those 5-star guys, you got to try and keep them home. But I would say just from a barometer sort of perspective, like if they're able to keep them home, then Mario is doing his job. He's won them over. It's hard to come in here and get the 23 kids to jump on board, but if
Mhm.
you can do that with the 24s, the two best 24s in your backyard, it probably sends a loud message, right?
Definitely. And that 24 class is very close down here in South Florida. A lot of those top guys have all played together growing up. Got the 5-star safety at Chaminade as well as Aquan Patterson. They've all played together growing up. So I think if you get those two guys, and then those are kind of the two leaders of that 24 class down here, you're gonna have every other top kid down here wanting to join in. And I think I've mentioned in prior podcasts that 24 class is the key. And if you get those two guys on board, you're going to be able to pick pretty much whoever you want down here. There's going to be a lot of guys that want to come along and play with them.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to watch how the season pans out for Miami, because I really do feel like they've got to win 9 to 10 games and be in the conference championship game at the end. I don't think anybody's expecting them to make the playoff. I think anybody's expecting them to win the ACC if Clemson is at their best, because that's
Hmm.
still a more talented team than they are. But I certainly think the hope is they take a step forward, and they've been in that 6, 7, 8, 9 win range for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's going to matter, I think, to these recruits that they see Miami take a step forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think they've got to win, 9, 10 games, at least make the conference championship. And then just look respectable in these big games. You can't go to A&M and get blown out. Can't go get blown out by Clemson. Whatever. Hopefully they make it to a good bowl game. Got to hopefully win or put up a big showing in that. So I think it's winning those 10, possibly 11 games overall, including the ACC championship or a bowl game. And then just putting up respectable performances, because so many times we've seen, even the years where Miami may have put 8, 9, 10 wins together, they go play, a Clemson on the road or whatever the case may be, and just get blown out, and or Clemson in the ACC championship game and get blown out. So I think on top of winning, those hopefully 9, 10 games, you just got to at least look respectable in some of the big games as well. You can't just look outclassed in some of these big matchups.
Yeah. Andrew, it was fun catching up with you, man. I know Miami is going to be on top of these recruits locally, trying to convince them and flip them over. I know that you're going to be out there watching them because you love this stuff, and I love having you on to come talk. What are your thoughts before we go, just on the way camp wrapped up? A lot of questions at receiver from Miami. Obviously, the running back situation, which we just touched on because of the injuries. What's your feeling here coming out of camp with the team?
I think wide receivers, the position I'm most worried about still. It's weird because there's a lot of names there, a lot of guys that came in highly ranked that have flashed. It's just seeing who's going to be that one or two guys that step up. So there's a lot of names. Hopefully, I know Jacoby George's been kind of in and out. You get him back. Romello Brinson. There's Keyshawn Smith. A lot of guys. Hopefully that step up. I think you're pretty set in the slot. You've got Brashard Smith, you've got Xavier Estrepo. I think they're set there. But just stepping up and seeing who's going to be the guy on the outside, I think is the biggest question mark going into this year. I feel a lot better about linebacker. this year than I did last year or the last couple of years. I think Caleb Johnson I've heard he's played really well. So I think he helps shore up that linebacker spot. And then with running back, I mean, you still got a solid three guys with Knighton, with Parrish, and with Dad Franklin. They're three guys that bring a lot of different assets to the table. And then obviously going out and getting this kid from UAB. So he had over, I think, 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns in his career at UAB. So he's a guy with Division One experience. He's got some production to be that fourth guy in case anything were to happen. So I think I'm not too worried about running back and linebacker this year, but seeing who steps up at receiver on the outside, I think is the biggest question mark.
All right. Well, you got a final score prediction for Saturday? Bethune-Cookman. How many points should Miami win by? This is a 2-9 Bethune-Cookman team last year, I believe.
Oh, it's tough with these games because I mean it all depends on how early they want to pull guys out and stuff like that. I think there's gonna be a lot of energy in the stadium. I'm hoping for, even though it's Bethune-Cookman, I'm hoping for a good crowd since it's Mario's first game. I know I'll be out there. I'm gonna go 63-10.
All right. I could take 53 points margin. I think most fans will be happy with that.
Yep, yep.
All
So
right, Andrew. Good catching up, brother. Any final thought as we go?
no, just excited to see what happens with this recruiting class over the next couple months, especially if they do come out and have a good season. Because even, some of these 4 or 5 star guys that are committed elsewhere, seems like the staff is on them nonstop. That Mario is not backing down from any teams, any kids that are committed elsewhere. So he's definitely doing the work on the recruiting side. It'll be interesting once the games get played if things pan out on the field. I think this class could end up being pretty special.
All right. A couple programming notes for our listeners. We're going to have Roddy Jones from ESPN, ACC analyst, on tomorrow to talk a little ACC with me. Then Wednesday, Sam Khan of The Athletic, our expert out in Texas, is going to come on and talk a little Texas A&M, since that's the big game I think everybody's sort of looking forward to. So that's it for our listeners. For Andrew Ferrelli, I'm Manny Navarro. We will see you guys soon.